through the sterile hallway, a constant reminder of the day my life took a sharp turn. 10 years ago, a reckless driver stole my leg and a piece of my childhood innocence. But I refused to let that define me. I adapted, pushed through the grueling physical therapy, and learned to walk again, albeit with a different kind of stride. Today, that stride carried me towards the towering glass building that housed my company, Exotech. I wasn't just any employee. I was a rising star in the engineering department, my innovative designs lauded by clients and colleagues alike. Yet a sliver of apprehension gnawed at the edges of my excitement. Our new manager, Kevin, had a reputation for being, well, difficult. As I entered his office, his sharp gaze snapped towards me. His smile, devoid of warmth, reached only his lips. "Ah, Miller," he drawled, his voice laced with a subtle condescension. "Finally decided to grace us with your presence." I ignored the jab, placing my project proposal on his desk. "Good morning, Kevin. Here's the final report for the Thompson project." He barely glanced at it, his fingers drumming impatiently on the armrest. "Let's get this over with," he sighed, flipping through the pages with practiced indifference. My stomach churned. Kevin's dismissive attitude was nothing new, but today it felt particularly pointed. Was it the slight limp in my gait, a constant reminder of my difference? Or was it something else entirely? He slammed the report shut, his eyes narrowing. "This is mediocre, Miller. I expected better from you." Anger flared within me, but I forced it down. Public confrontations with Kevin rarely ended well. "I'm confident in the design, Kevin," I stated calmly. "The simulations show." He cut me off with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Save it, Miller. We're going with a different approach. Consider this a learning experience." Frustration bubbled up, threatening to spill over. "But." "Dismissed," he barked, his voice leaving no room for argument. I left his office, my steps heavy with a mix of disappointment and simmering indignation. Kevin's dismissive attitude felt like a personal attack, a jab at my abilities, and a blatant disregard for the countless hours I had poured into the project. As I walked back to my desk, a voice echoed in my head, "Don't let him define you." It was a mantra I had repeated to myself countless times, a shield against negativity. Today, however, it felt more like a challenge, a dare to prove myself not just to Kevin, but to myself. This wasn't just about a project. It was about standing up for my work, my abilities, and refusing to be silenced by prejudice. Taking a deep breath, I set my jaw. Kevin's opinion wouldn't deter me. I would find a way to make my voice heard, to prove that even with a prosthetic leg, I could stand tall and excel in this company. The journey wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it, one determined step at a time. The days following Kevin's dismissal of my project proposal were a tense dance between simmering anger and forced professionalism. I kept my head down, focusing on my other ongoing projects, all the while searching for an opportunity to demonstrate the merit of my rejected design. One afternoon during a departmental meeting, Kevin announced a company-wide retreat planned for the following weekend. The agenda included team-building activities and strategic planning sessions, all held at a remote lodge nestled amidst picturesque mountains. A wave of unease washed over me. While the retreat itself wasn't unusual, the location sent shivers down my spine. Hiking trails and uneven terrain weren't exactly my forte, especially with my prosthetic leg. "This retreat is mandatory for all department heads and senior engineers," Kevin declared, his eyes scanning the room. "Miller, I expect you to attend." My heart hammered against my ribs. Refusing to participate could be misconstrued as insubordination, but the thought of navigating treacherous terrain with Kevin around was unsettling. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage. "Kevin," I began, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "While I appreciate the opportunity to participate, I'm concerned about the accessibility of the location for individuals with—" I hesitated, searching for the right words. Kevin's brows furrowed, a hint of annoyance creeping into his expression. "Are you suggesting you're incapable of handling a few hikes, Miller?" My cheeks flushed. "Not at all, sir. However, I would appreciate it if the organizers could consider alternative activities or ensure the trails are accessible for everyone. A tense silence filled the room as all eyes turned towards Kevin. He cleared his throat, his gaze hardening. "We'll make the necessary arrangements," he finally conceded, his voice laced with condescension. "But make no mistake, Miller, your participation is expected." I nodded curtly, a knot of apprehension tightening in my stomach. The retreat loomed on the horizon, a potential minefield of physical challenges, and more importantly, Kevin's ever-present prejudice. But I wouldn't back down. I would attend, not just to prove my capabilities, but also to challenge Kevin's assumptions and hopefully gain the respect I deserved. The upcoming trip was no longer just a company retreat. It was a personal test of resilience, a chance to overcome not just the physical obstacles, but also the ingrained biases that threatened to undermine my worth. The crisp mountain air bit at my cheeks as the company van rumbled along the winding road, finally reaching the secluded lodge nestled amidst towering pines. Excitement buzzed amongst my colleagues, their chatter a stark contrast to the gnawing anxiety churning in my gut. As we disembarked, Kevin approached me, his eyes glinting with a hint of amusement. "Ready for some adventure, Miller?" he drawled, a mocking smile playing on his lips. I met his gaze, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. "Absolutely, Kevin. I'm sure I'll manage just fine." He chuckled, a humorless sound that sent shivers down my spine. "We'll see about that," he muttered, turning away and joining another group. The following day, the team embarked on the first planned activity, a challenging hike through a rugged mountain trail. The uneven terrain, coupled with loose rocks and steep inclines, proved difficult even for the most sure-footed individuals. As I navigated the path, my prosthetic leg occasionally faltered, the uneven ground throwing off my balance. Beads of sweat formed on my forehead, a mix of exertion and anxiety fueling my every step. Halfway through the hike, I reached a particularly treacherous section, a narrow ledge overlooking a steep drop. Panic surged through me as my prosthetic leg caught on a protruding rock, threatening to throw me off balance. "Help!" I cried out, my voice echoing through the silent mountains. For a moment, there was only the sound of my pounding heart and the wind whistling through the trees. Then, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Hold on, Miller." Mr. Smith, my former middle school teacher, emerged from behind a bend, his face etched with concern. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. Mr. Smith, who happened to be on a personal hiking trip in the same area, had witnessed my struggle. With surprising agility for his age, he scrambled down the rocky slope and reached my side. Together, we managed to dislodge my leg and navigate the treacherous section, his steady hand and words of encouragement guiding me through the remaining path. Reaching the end of the hike, I slumped onto a nearby rock, my body trembling with exhaustion and lingering fear. Mr. Smith placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You did well, John," he said, his voice warm and reassuring. "Never underestimate your own strength." His words resonated deep within me, a stark contrast to Kevin's constant belittlement. In that moment, I realized that the true challenge wasn't the mountain trail, but the doubt and prejudice I had been battling both internally and externally. The hike had been more than just a physical test. It had been a turning point. Mr. Smith's unexpected support had rekindled a spark of self-belief, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. With renewed determination, I steeled myself for the remaining days of the retreat, ready to face not just the physical obstacles, but also Kevin's negativity head-on. The remaining days of the retreat unfolded in a blur of team-building exercises and strategic planning sessions. While the physical activities continued to pose challenges, I persevered, fueled by a newfound determination and the unwavering support of Mr. Smith, who had surprisingly joined the group for the rest of the trip. One evening during a bonfire gathering, Kevin approached me, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Enjoying the retreat, Miller?" he asked, his voice laced with a false sincerity. I met his gaze unflinchingly. "Yes, thank you, Kevin. Despite the challenges." He chuckled, a low, humorless sound. Challenges that could have been easily avoided, wouldn't you agree? My jaw clenched, but I held my tongue, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a rise. Perhaps, he continued, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But hey, maybe this little adventure has helped you understand your limitations. The implication was clear, a thinly veiled jab at my disability. Anger flared within me, but this time it was accompanied by a sense of resolve. My limitations, Kevin, I stated, my voice surprisingly calm, are far less significant than your prejudice. He recoiled slightly, taken aback by my unexpected defiance. His eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint flickering within them. "Watch your tone, Miller," he growled, his voice laced with barely contained threat. Before he could say anything further, a voice boomed from across the gathering. "What seems to be the problem here?" Mr. Smith stood tall, his gaze fixed on Kevin, his presence radiating unexpected authority. Kevin stammered, momentarily thrown off guard. "Just a friendly conversation, Mr. Smith." Mr. Smith's gaze remained fixed on Kevin, his voice firm and unwavering. "If it involves any form of harassment or discrimination towards any member of this team, it's far from friendly." Kevin's face flushed crimson, and he mumbled an apology before slinking away into the darkness. Mr. Smith turned to me, a reassuring smile gracing his lips. "Don't let him get to you, John. You're a valuable member of this team, and your contributions are undeniable." His words, spoken with genuine respect and appreciation, warmed me from the inside out. They were a validation of my abilities, a stark contrast to Kevin's constant negativity. That night, as I stared at the crackling flames, a sense of quiet confidence settled over me. The retreat, despite its initial challenges, had become a turning point. I had not only conquered the physical obstacles, but also confronted my doubts and challenged Kevin's prejudice head-on. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but I knew I wasn't alone. With Mr. Smith's support and my own unwavering determination, I was ready to face whatever came my way, proving that even with a prosthetic leg, I could stand tall and thrive in the face of adversity. We returned from the retreat, the mountain air replaced by the familiar hum of the office. Yet something had shifted within me. The experience had ignited a fire in my belly, a determination to not only excel in my work, but also to challenge the discriminatory environment Kevin had fostered. One Monday morning, I marched into Kevin's office, a file clutched firmly in my hand. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face as he saw my resolute expression. "Miller," he drawled, a hint of unease creeping into his voice. "What can I do for you?" "I'd like to discuss the Thompson project," I stated, placing the file on his desk. He raised an eyebrow, his usual dismissive demeanor replaced by a wary curiosity. "As you know," I continued, my voice steady, "you rejected my initial design proposal despite its proven effectiveness." He leaned back in his chair, his gaze piercing. "And I've conducted further research and simulations," I explained, "and I'm confident that my design is not only superior, but also more cost-effective in the long run." I opened the file, revealing a detailed presentation outlining the revised design, addressing Kevin's previous concerns, and highlighting its numerous advantages. As he meticulously reviewed the presentation, a tense silence filled the room. Finally, he looked up, his expression unreadable. "This is interesting," he conceded, his voice devoid of its usual condescension. "I believe it's the most viable option for the project," I pressed, my voice firm, "and I'm prepared to present it to the board myself if necessary." A flicker of something akin to respect flickered in his eyes. He cleared his throat. "Very well, Miller," he said, his voice surprisingly neutral. "Schedule a meeting with the board. We'll hear your proposal." A surge of triumph coursed through me. This was just the first step, but it was a significant one. I had not only forced Kevin to reconsider my design, but also asserted my voice and challenged his authority. The following week, I presented my revised proposal to the board. My confidence, fueled by months of meticulous research and unwavering determination, resonated through the room. The board members, impressed by the thoroughness and effectiveness of my design, unanimously approved it. News of the board's decision spread like wildfire through the company. Kevin, forced to publicly acknowledge my contribution, remained stoic, but the smugness had vanished from his eyes, replaced by grudging respect. As I walked back to my desk that day, I held my head high. The journey had been arduous, but I had emerged stronger, my voice finally heard and my abilities recognized. The fight for equality wasn't over, but this victory served as a potent reminder. Even with a prosthetic leg, I could stand tall, break down barriers, and leave my mark on the world. Months turned into years, and the echoes of the mountain retreat continued to reverberate within the company. My successful presentation and the subsequent board approval of my design not only marked a personal victory, but also sparked a subtle shift in the company culture. Kevin, though never openly apologetic, adopted a noticeably less dismissive attitude towards me. He even began acknowledging my contributions in meetings, albeit grudgingly. More importantly, the incident served as a catalyst for change within the organization. One morning, I was summoned to the CEO's office. Mr. Johnson, a man known for his integrity and progressive leadership, greeted me with a warm smile. "John," he began, "your courage and determination in the face of adversity have not gone unnoticed. You've not only proven your exceptional skills, but also highlighted the importance of fostering an inclusive and respectful work environment." I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Mr. Johnson's recognition meant a lot, especially considering the initial challenges I had faced. "Thank you, Mr. Johnson," I replied. "I was simply doing what I believed was right." He nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Your actions have prompted us to re-evaluate our company policies and practices. We're actively seeking ways to promote diversity and inclusion, not just in terms of hiring, but also in creating a workplace where everyone feels valued and respected." He leaned forward, his voice filled with genuine sincerity. "We're launching a new initiative to recruit individuals with disabilities, and we believe your experience and insights would be invaluable in guiding this program." Surprise mixed with a surge of pride. This was more than I could have ever hoped for. The initial struggle, the fight against prejudice, had not only empowered me but also paved the way for positive change within the entire organization. "I'm honored," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I would be happy to contribute in any way I can." Mr. Johnson smiled warmly. "Excellent. Together, we can build a company that thrives on diversity, innovation, and most importantly, respect for all individuals, regardless of their abilities." As I walked out of his office, a sense of accomplishment filled me. The journey had been a roller coaster of emotions, but it had ultimately led to a positive outcome. My voice had been heard not just by Kevin, but by the entire company. And in the process, I had not only carved my own path, but also helped pave the way for a more inclusive and equitable future for others. Years flowed by, marked by a significant transformation within the company. Mr. Johnson's commitment to diversity and inclusion translated into concrete action. The company actively recruited individuals with disabilities, creating a vibrant and diverse workforce. Regular sensitivity training sessions became mandatory, fostering a culture of understanding and respect. One sunny afternoon, I stood on the balcony overlooking the bustling city, the same balcony where I had once shared quiet moments with Mr. Smith. Sarah, now a rising star in the engineering department and a close friend, leaned against the railing beside me, a proud smile gracing her lips. "Remember when this place felt suffocating?" she asked, her voice laced with a hint of nostalgia.